Ever imagine yourself as like, I don't know, the environmental guardian, the one making sure all those industries are playing by the rules when it comes to waste?
It's a crucial role for sure.
We're talking industrial waste inspector today and diving deep into what it takes to make it in this field.
Often overlooked, but so important.
Absolutely. And to guide us, we're going deep into some resources from RoleCatcher, this awesome career development platform.
I've been checking out their stuff. It's really comprehensive.
They've got their Industrial Waste Inspector Career Guide, a bunch on interview prep resources, even insights into how tech's changing the whole job search game.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating how they cover the entire journey, from understanding the actual job to nailing that interview and everything in between.
Right. So let's jump right in. Picture this. You're industrial waste inspector. You show up at a manufacturing plant.
Clipboard in hand.
Hard hat on, maybe even a little bit of that environmental detective vibe going on. What's the first thing you're looking for?
It's not all about catching violations, though, right? I mean, a big part of it is working with those companies to help them understand and actually follow those sometimes super complex environmental regulations.
So there's kind of a balance then.
Oh, yeah, big time. It's like one minute you're deep in regulatory documents, the next you're explaining like complicated permit requirements to a plant manager.
So you need that mix of like being able to enforce but also educate.
Totally. And that's something RoleCatcher really emphasizes, that importance of both hard and soft skills. You got to have that deep well of technical knowledge, obviously.
Of course.
But being able to communicate effectively, navigate those tricky interpersonal situations, that's where it gets really interesting.
Absolutely. Because you're dealing with people, not just regulations.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's say you ace that interview. Don't worry, we'll unpack RoleCatcher's awesome interview tips later. But you're starting out your career. What does that path even look like?
Well, RoleCatcher breaks it down into 4 main stages. Entry level, then junior, senior, and then reaching the peak, that principal industrial waste inspector.
Okay, so like climbing the environmental ladder.
Right. And with each step, a whole new level of responsibility, and complexity.
So walk us through it. What's like an example of something an entry-level inspector would be doing versus someone at like that principal level?
Okay, so picture that entry-level inspector. They might be assisting with sample collection, making sure everything's documented correctly, really learning the ropes.
So it's a lot of like foundational work.
Exactly, like building that solid base. Now, fast forward a bit to the junior inspector level. You're starting to conduct those more independent inspections, maybe even starting to recommend some corrective actions.
So you're given a bit more, what, autonomy?
Right. You're trusted to take more ownership, too.
Okay, so you're moving from following procedures to like maybe even shaping them a little.
Yeah, definitely.
What happens at that senior level then?
That's where those leadership skills really come into play. Not only are they leading those inspections, but they're digging into the nitty-gritty, analyzing data, coming up with strategies for improvement.
Whoa, so it's getting pretty high level.
Oh, yeah. And don't forget the mentoring. They're the ones guiding those newer inspectors, passing on their knowledge. You become a leader within the team, for sure.
So you've gone from hands-on inspections to like influencing how things are done at a higher level.
Yeah.
What's the view like from the tippy top, that principal inspector role?
Now you're talking. We're talking shaping the entire system, providing strategic leadership, developing policies and programs, maybe even conducting those super high-level inspections at, like, the most complex facilities.
Wow. So they're basically the go-to expert at that point.
Pretty much. Advising internal teams, external stakeholders. It really shows you how much knowledge and experience you gain in this field.
It's incredible how much influence you can have on how an entire industry operates.
Right. And it all begins with those initial inspections, making sure those regulations are being followed.
It's challenging, but man, that's got to be rewarding.
For sure.
Speaking of challenges, though, let's talk about those interviews. RoleCatcher has a whole section on interview prep, and some of those sample questions they give are pretty intense.
Oh, they don't mess around.
They really make you think.
It's not just reciting regulations. They want to know how you operate under pressure, your thought processes. How would you handle those curveball situations, those ethical dilemmas you might bump into on the job?
Ooh, give us an example. Like, what's one of those curveball questions that makes you really stop and think?
One that really jumped out at me was, can you describe a time you had to make like a really difficult decision about environmental compliance?
Oh, it's a good one. It's not always so cut and dry, right?
Exactly.
Like, what if a company is technically in violation, but they're trying to do the right thing?
Yeah.
How do you even begin to balance those things?
That's the heart of it, right? It's about understanding the why behind those regulations, not just like blindly enforcing the letter of the law, right? And that takes critical thinking, good judgment, knowing when to stand your ground, but also like when to be flexible.
So you need to be like part environmental detective, part diplomat,
Ha, right.
all in one. You investigate, analyze, then you have to communicate those findings in a way that like brings everyone on board.
And that's actually why a lot of the questions RoleCatcher focuses on are all about conflict resolution.
Makes sense.
They want to know how you'd handle it if a company's pushing back against a regulation, or if you're dealing with different regulatory agencies, maybe they interpret the rules differently.
Sounds like you need the patience of a saint.
Sometimes, yeah.
And some serious negotiation skills, too. But it shows you how important this role really is. You're not just, like, slapping fines on people.
Yeah.
You're facilitating this whole process
Absolutely.
of understanding and collaboration.
Exactly.
Okay, so we talked about those career stages earlier, entry level all the way up to principal. I'm guessing those challenges get a whole lot more, I don't know, complex as you move up that ladder.
Oh, for sure. That entry-level inspector might be dealing with, like, a pretty straightforward case of improper disposal, but a principal inspector?
Yeah, what are they dealing with?
They could be grappling with the entire environmental impact of some brand new manufacturing process. We're talking big picture stuff.
That's a huge difference.
Right. And those higher level roles, they often involve shaping policy, giving advice on emerging technologies. You might even have to testify as an expert witness in court. It's not just about enforcing the rules anymore. It's about shaping how those rules are made in the first place.
Wow. That's a lot of responsibility. Sounds like the learning never really stops in this field.
It really doesn't. RoleCatcher talks a lot about continuous learning, things like professional development courses, industry conferences, even going for advanced degrees or certifications.
So even if you've been doing this for years, there's always something new to learn.
Always.
Wow. And that actually brings us to, I think, the coolest part of all of this, how tech is totally changing the game in this field.
Oh, absolutely.
Remember how RoleCatcher talked about the impact of tech, both in terms of like actually doing the job and even just finding the job in the first place?
All right.
It's like the rise of the, I don't know, the digital environmental detective or something. So how is tech really changing things?
Well, on the job hunting side, like RoleCatcher's own platform actually uses AI to help people tailor their resumes to specific jobs. So you upload your resume, their system analyzes it next to actual job descriptions, and it tells you, like, hey, you might want to highlight these skills more, or maybe add this kind of experience.
It's like having a digital career coach in your back pocket.
Totally.
But what about the job itself?
Yeah.
How are industrial waste inspectors using all this cool new tech?
Oh, man, it's changing everything. How data's collected, how it's analyzed, how companies track their environmental impact. We're talking sensors that can pick up on, like, leaks in real time.
Wow.
Drones that can survey huge areas for contamination. Software that can analyze mountains of data to spot patterns and potential risks.
It's like a whole new arsenal of tools at your disposal. But I guess that also means that inspectors need to know how to use this stuff, right?
Oh, 100%. It's not just about knowing the rules anymore. It's about understanding how tech is being used to actually enforce those rules.
Right.
And how companies are adapting because of it.
So you're not just an inspector, you're like a tech-savvy environmental superhero.
Ah, right.
If you love protecting the environment, but you also get excited about cutting-edge technology, this could be the perfect career.
Yeah, I think so. It's a field where you can truly make a difference, protecting public health, making sure industries operate sustainably. And with tech evolving all the time, it's only going to get more important, more exciting.
It's like we're on the edge of this whole new era of environmental protection, and industrial waste inspectors are going to be leading the charge. Speaking of leading the charge, RoleCatcher had some cool insights about career advancement in this field, about how to really stand out. What were some of their takeaways?
One of the biggies is networking. Attending industry events, connecting with people on LinkedIn, even just reaching out to folks for informational interviews.
So classic networking advice, but in this field, it seems extra important.
Oh, for sure. It's all about building those relationships, learning from people who've been there, done that.
Because in this field, you're collaborating all the time.
Right. Exactly. And speaking of learning from others, don't underestimate the power of finding a mentor. Someone who can guide you, support you. RoleCatcher actually has this whole section where they connect mentors and mentees in all sorts of fields.
Wow. So they're not just about like getting your foot in the door. They're about helping you build a whole career.
Exactly.
That's awesome. What else do they highlight?
Communication skills. It came up again and again.
Makes sense. You're dealing with a lot of different people, right?
All the time. Engineers, plant managers, regulators, even the public sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to explain complex stuff clearly, and sometimes you need to be persuasive too, right?
Oh, yeah. It's like we were saying before, you're not just inspecting. Sometimes you're educating, negotiating, even doing a little bit of like selling when you're trying to get a company to adopt a new way of doing things.
Exactly. So RoleCatcher suggests looking into courses or workshops on stuff like technical writing, public speaking, even conflict resolution. Those skills will take you far no matter what stage of your career you're in.
It's like you need that solid technical base, but those people skills. That's what really rounds you out as an industrial waste inspector.
For sure. And remember how we were talking about tech becoming so important?
Yeah.
RoleCatcher actually thinks that soon, knowing about AI and data analytics, that'll be just as crucial for inspectors as knowing the environmental regs themselves.
Wow. So not just using the tech, but actually understanding how it works, how to maybe even design and implement it.
Exactly. And that can be a little intimidating, right?
Yeah.
But it's also super exciting. It's a field that's constantly evolving, and the people who thrive are the ones who can adapt, who are hungry to learn, who are comfortable working with, like, one foot in the tech world and one foot in environmental science.
So challenging, yes.
The thing.
But also tons of opportunity to grow and make a real impact.
100%.
And let's be honest, probably pretty good job security too.
Oh, definitely. The demand for qualified inspectors is only going up, especially as those environmental regulations get stricter and companies focus more on sustainability.
So if you're looking for a career with purpose, where you can actually make a difference, and you don't mind a little intellectual challenge, this could be it.
Absolutely.
And the great thing is, you don't have to figure it all out on your own. RoleCatcher, they've got your back. With those detailed career guides, interview prep, insights into how tech is changing everything.
They really are a one-stop shop for this whole career path.
For sure. We'll definitely link to them in the show notes, so check them out if you're intrigued. But before we wrap up, I wanted to go back to something you said earlier about tech.
Okay.
It got me thinking, for someone just starting out as an industrial waste inspector, in this world that's changing so fast,
Yeah.
what advice would you give them? What skills or knowledge do you think will be the most valuable down the line? It's a lot to wrap your head around, for sure. But that's where I feel like those RoleCatcher insights are so helpful.
Oh, 100%. They're right there on the front lines, seeing how this stuff is playing out, both in how the jobs themselves are changing and how people are preparing for them.
Right. It's definitely not your parents' job search anymore.
Yeah.
So what's their big takeaway? How can someone listening today, how can they actually position themselves for success in this field, especially with all this talk about AI and algorithms taking over?
Well, you hit the nail on the head with AI and algorithms. Remember how we were talking about how RoleCatcher's platform actually uses AI to match your skills to the right job descriptions?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, a secret weapon in your job search.
Giving your resume that technological edge, making sure it actually gets seen, right?
Exactly. But it also highlights this really important point for anyone even thinking about going into this line of work as recruitment gets more and more automated.
Yeah.
Knowing how those algorithms work, how to make them work for you, that becomes essential.
It's like you have to learn how to speak the language of the digital gatekeepers or something.
It really is. Think about it. Two candidates, both equally qualified, both passionate about the environment. One of them just blasts their resume out randomly to every job board they can find.
Right.
The other one, they use a platform like RoleCatcher to really target those companies and roles that are a perfect match for their skills.
It's a no-brainer. Who's going to have the advantage there?
Exactly. And that's just one tiny example.
Yeah.
But the good news is RoleCatcher, they give you the tools and the guidance to navigate all of this. They're constantly updating their platform and everything, staying ahead of the curve so you don't have to.
It's like having a guide in a world that's changing every single day, which can feel overwhelming, especially in a field as important as environmental protection.
Yeah.
We need those people out there.
We do. And that actually reminds me, I want to leave everyone with this one final thought. You know, as you're thinking about a career as an industrial waste inspector,
Yeah.
it's not just about memorizing a bunch of regulations. It's about being adaptable, being open to those new technologies, always being curious and ready to learn and grow.
Because the field itself is growing and changing so quickly.
Exactly. It's not a static thing. It's dynamic.
I love that. So it's about combining that passion for the environment
Yeah.
with a real knack for problem solving. A little tech savviness never hurts.
For sure.
And if you're ready to jump in, remember, resources like RoleCatcher are out there to help you every step of the way.
Absolutely. So if you're hearing this and you're thinking, this sounds like me, this sounds like my thing, go for it.
The planet needs you. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of industrial waste inspectors.
This is great.
We covered a ton today, from the nitty-gritty of inspections to the huge impact this career has on, like, the whole planet and, of course, the wild ride that tech is taking us all on.
It's a wild ride, but somebody's got to be in the driver's seat.
That's right. Thanks to everyone out there for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back next time with another fascinating look into the world of work and probably some more of that cutting-edge tech, too. See you then.
See you.